Hey everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming to watch this live stream, and it's good to be back. I was sick the last couple of days, still a little sick. Still have a itch in my nose and a tickle in my throat. So we'll see if I can get through this without having to sneeze or snort or something like that. But I'm glad to be back to being about maybe 90% or so. So I'm happy with that. And obviously nothing really happened important over the last 2 days other than Marathon buying a facility from Applied Digital. So we'll take a look at that. We'll also take a look at how the miners are comparing to the network hash rate growth in the last month. What's the percentage of the network hash rate right now? And then we'll take a look at how the Bitcoin miners performed over the last week against Bitcoin. And we'll do a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you guys have any questions, save those towards the end. There is a delay in this. So it's going to be like a 15-second, 20-second delay between when you guys post a question and when I actually talk about it, okay? But as always, you guys know the drill here. This is not financial advice, for entertainment only. Please do your own research and invest in following coins and companies for full disclosure. And if you enjoy this type of content, hit like button, subscribe, helps me out tremendously. Corrections will be posted to Discord through Patreon, and then YouTube community posts, Twitter, if we have any corrections that need to be made. But let's take a look at see what happened here with Bitcoin here in the last couple of days, along with the miners here really quick. And we'll get into the stories that we do have here. So Bitcoin obviously has had a downtrend here in the last 3 days here. We obviously peaked at 73,835, it looks like, was our peak there. We reached that, it looks like, on Thursday. And then ever since then, I think we peaked out on Thursday, and then we fell down. We fell down on Friday as well. We're falling again here on today. So we've had a 3-day losing streak here in Bitcoin. Miners, on the other hand, on Friday, were actually in the green here. Some of the miners were up huge. BitDeer, you can see here, was up 23%. Who else was up pretty good? CORZ was up 12%. Cleanspark was up 10%. Cypher was up 11%. Mawson was up 11% for really no reason there on that one. And it's just an interesting day, right? Usually we're used to seeing Bitcoin going up and miners going down. This time we're seeing Bitcoin coming down and miners going up. So interesting dichotomy here that we're seeing in Bitcoin. And sometimes it gets like that. It's not something to be worried about, but we might start seeing the rotation happening from like Bitcoin ETFs, and like MicroStrategy going back into the miners as we get closer to the halving event, or possibly after the halving event as well. So we'll see how things play out that way. Okay, but right now, I'm not too worried about things. We're still early. We're 32 days away from the halving event right now as it is. I'm still looking to dollar cost average in if we get the dips, which I hope we do. That way I can have a bigger bag at the end of it all before things are all said and done. But that's it on the miners here really quick, and Bitcoin. Let's take a look at the story that we do have here, which is going to be on Marathon really quick. So Marathon Digital Holdings enters definitive agreement to acquire 200 megawatt Bitcoin mining data center adjacent to a wind farm. So I do have some questions on this. We'll get into it here, but here's what the details are. So Marathon has entered into a definitive purchase agreement to acquire Applied Digital Corporation's Bitcoin mining data center in Garden City, Texas, with a nameplate capacity of 200 megawatts for a purchase price of $87.3 million, or approximately $437,000 per megawatt. Prior to any purchase price adjustments, Marathon will pay the purchase price in cash from its balance sheet, which is good. Didn't state whether or not they were using that 1.5 billion ATM on this. They might have already used it a little bit and put it into cash, but they're using it from cash nonetheless. Continuing on here, this transaction is Marathon's second major acquisition of data centers dedicated to Bitcoin mining in the last 4 months, and increases the amount of self-owned and operated megawatts in Marathon's Bitcoin mining portfolio to 54%, so that's good. Right, prior to this, before the prior purchase and this now, they were pretty much asset light. They were hosting all of their machines with Applied Digital, with others. So this is a good move, right? This hopefully will get them to a point where they have a little bit more stability in their productions, also have a little bit more control over it, also lower their costs going forward. These are all great things that we want them to see. Big thing is obviously we want to see production stabilize and go back to where it probably should be. They're at 28 exahash. They should be running at that. They're running much lower than that as it is. Okay, so here's a question on this part. The Bitcoin mining data center in Garden City, Texas is located adjacent to a wind farm and uses predominantly renewable energy. Predominantly, does that mean 51%? Does that mean 90%? What is that mixture there? And if the wind is not blowing, are they not able to mine at that point? So that's a question I would have for probably Fred Thiel. On that facility, what's going on with that one? Do you have access to electricity all the time, or can you only mine when the wind is blowing, basically? Okay. Going down here, by acquiring this data center, Marathon will take direct ownership of its current on-site operations and will also gain an additional 100 megawatts of capacity in which to expand, 32 megawatts of which are expected to be available as of the closing date, and the remainder of which are subject to regulatory approvals. Marathon expects to expand its presence at the site in 2024 by an additional 100 megawatts to accommodate a total of 200 megawatts of capacity dedicated exclusively to Marathon's Bitcoin mining operations. So that is good there. In addition to providing Marathon with more influential and secure ownership of its operations as well as expansion opportunities, this transaction also is expected to reduce the cost per coin of Marathon's current operations at the site by approximately 20%, which is really good there, right? They've been paying the hosting fees and everything else. And they've been probably around 7 cents per, I'm guessing, per megawatt or per kilowatt hour on that. So reducing it by 20%, you're looking at somewhere around 5 cents, maybe less than that. But then you also have to include the cost of operations in there, employees, things like that. That's going to bump it up a little bit. But overall, their costs should go down on that nonetheless. So this is all good news, right? And Marathon obviously has had issues here in the last 2 months, January and February, where their production has been abysmal for the most part. They've been operating at like 40, 50% of what they should be. And if we look at Marapool right now, we can see things are kind of still up and down. So in the last, well, today they've only mined so far 1 block. Yesterday they mined only 1 block so far also. The day before on the 14th, they mined 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks. So that's a little bit better looking there. Kind of more where they should be, probably a little bit higher than that even. And then on the 13th, they only mined 2 blocks. The 12th, they mined 1 block. On the 11th, they mined a little bit more here, 3 blocks. The 10th, they actually mined pretty good here. On the 10th, they mined here, looks like, let's take a count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks. That's kind of where they really should be, probably around 8 blocks based on their size. So you can see how their production is just kind of all over the place and not very consistent, I guess you could say, on it. Okay, so that's obviously the concern that we have with Marathon. That's one of the things that we keep harping about them on, is their uptime, efficiency, and consistency on all those things. And hopefully with them buying their own facilities and having control over them, eventually they will get to a point where they will have a more consistent uptime, closer to the 100% uptime. Will that be even possible? Don't know, but if they could get at least to like 90, 95% uptime, I think it would be a lot better than where they are right now. So I'm rooting for them. I'm hoping they can get this figured out and solved and move forward from here. Okay, so that's it on that one. Let's take a look at just the network hash rate comparison to publicly traded Bitcoin miners combined hash rate. So what we're looking here is how much has the network hash rate grown month over month? How far have the miners gone in that same time frame? What is the percentage of the Bitcoin miners right now? And we can see here that I'm using the 30-day average on the network hash rate here. And in February, it was about 570 exahash on it, and the miners went up to 134. So the miners did increase a little bit here. The network increased by 46 exahash, and the miners that I cover here, at least the 18 or so, increased by about 10.2 exahash. So about a quarter of that came from the miners themselves here that we cover. Going down here, we can see the miners' percentage of the network hash rate over time. And we're looking basically at 24 months, roughly 24, 23 months, something like that, historically. And they had the most here in July of last year with 26.9% of the network hash rate. And then ever since then, it's been kind of coming down here a little bit. Obviously, we saw Marathon increase a lot here with their hash rate, some others as well. But Marathon obviously primarily driving this growth here in May, June, July, and in through some of the other months as well. But then we've started seeing the private, or the ones that we don't cover, miners increase also quite more than the ones that I cover here. And right now, the miners are down to 23.6. That's the lowest it's been since probably October of 2022, where it was at 22.9 at that point. But we still have a lot of growth left in the miners that I cover. We got Cleanspark getting to 32 exahash still this year. That's going to be a lot of growth there. We got Bitfarms growing to 21 exahash. That's a lot of growth there. Riot, Marathon as well, growing tremendously. Cypher, TerraWolf, all those guys are still having huge plans. Iris Energy as well, or IREN, sorry, on that one. So there's still plenty of growth left. And then here's the month-over-month difference on it. You can see this would be for the miners themselves. They increased by 8.3. Or this would be, let's see here, what would this be actually? I should probably write this down. Let's take a look at what that is entailing. That entails month over month. So yeah, we're looking at the miners themselves. How much did they increase on that one? Going back over here, that's done. Okay, so it's for the miners themselves, how much they increased here, month over month. And then down here, we can see the individual miners as far as what is their percentage of the network hash rate. Have they decreased in the network hash rate percentage or increased? So the what is these lime green lines indicate the current month. The blue bars indicate the previous month. Right, so we can see here Argo is down a little bit here, but Digital is actually up just slightly. They're at 0.005 compared to the 0.049 that they were at. BitDeer is down from the prior month. Bitfarms is down. Cypher is down. Cleanspark is up huge. Obviously, Cleanspark installed approximately 6 exahash in a month here, so that's why they've jumped way up here. You got Core being down a little bit here. Digihost, DMG, Hive as well. Hive is actually up a little bit here. They installed some machines. Hut8 is down. Iris Energy is up. Marathon is down a little bit. Mawson's down. Riot is down. Sphere is down. Stronghold is up a little bit. And TeraWolf is up as well. So we're seeing some miners install more machines to get a little bit more percentage of the network hash rate, which is nice to see. And we'll see how this continues going forward throughout the rest of the year. Obviously, we want the miners to be increasing more than the network hash rate is. But they can't obviously do that every single month. Sometimes they have really good months, like you can see here on Cleanspark. 6 exahash growth is huge for them. And then we'll see how they go forward. So we want to see continued growth basically each month if we can. So they can at least sustain what the network hash rate is increasing or beat it, right? It's kind of what we're looking for. But that's it. Let me know what you guys think of that in the questions if you guys have any on that one. But that's how everything stacks up here. Then let's take a look at the month or the weekly actually numbers here for Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners. And I should probably update this as well. I didn't change that yet. Going down here. We're going to go descending. There we go. Okay. So here's how things stack up right now for the miners as far as from their 52-week lows. How far have they increased in percentage gains? And also how far away are they from their 52-week highs? So we can see here that Cleanspark obviously is still the best one so far. Cleanspark's up 632%, followed by Mawson, which like I keep saying each week, there's really no reason for Mawson to be up as high as they are other than manipulation. They don't have a lot of shares out. TeraWolf up 201%, BitDeer up 188, and you got Marathon up 181. Bitcoin's up 180, so all those guys have outperformed Bitcoin here in the last 52 weeks. Then you got Bitfarms at 174%, Sphere 153, and then the list goes down to where you got Hive only being up 11.6% from 52 weeks ago, or from 52-week lows. Core being up 31%, but Core obviously changed their ticker symbol as well, so that's having an impact on them here. And then Hut8 being only up 36% and Riot 51% as well, right? Riot, we know, is also having issues with their production as well. So they haven't been really rewarded for that, it looks like right now, even though they have a pretty good HODL and everything else. And then on the red bars here, we can see how far away the miners are from the 52-week highs. The closest one is obviously Bitcoin, only 5.8% away from its 52-week high. And then Cleanspark is 25% away. And everybody else here is kind of in the 40s, 30s, 50s, and 60s for the most part. We don't have anybody 70% or higher away from the 52-week highs. So that's how that looks. Going down over here to the weekly numbers. And I'm tracking Bitcoin from Friday to Friday along with the miners. So that's kind of the way we're going through this. And BitDeer had the best week out of all the miners. They were up 18%, followed by Cypher with 14%. Bitcoin was only up 2% from Friday to Friday. On that time frame, Cleanspark was down 2%, Hut was down 5%, Core was down 9%. And then you can see how everybody else is kind of stacked up here. Argo was down the most, 29%, along with Marathon down 28%. Sphere 28 as well. Iris down 23%. Bitfarms down 23%. So not a great week for the miners. Bitcoin, even though, was able to squeak out basically a 2% increase. A lot of the miners did far worse than what Bitcoin did. Right? And that's kind of the thing that we've been hearing is people complaining what's going on with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, what's happening there. And like I've said before, sometimes they just decouple from each other for a little bit. And then we get a rotation happening back into the miners. The miners pump harder than Bitcoin. So something to keep an eye on there. And you can see this a little bit in the charts here. We're on the 4 weeks. We see Bitcoin being up 37%. And we see pretty much everybody here in the below performing Bitcoin. And some are actually in the negative. Only one that's in the positive is BitDeer, up 15% from 4 weeks ago. If we look at 8 weeks, now the things change around a little bit here. You can see Cleanspark's up 154% still from 8 weeks ago. Bitcoin's up 66%. Then you got Cypher up 32%, BitDeer's up 25%, you got TeraWolf up 29%, Hut8 is up 22%, Marathon up 20% from there, and then we got some that are down. Mawson's 39%, Sphere's down 22%, Marathon is actually up 20%, Argo down 12%, and when we look at 12 weeks, we can see the same kind of story here more or less. Bitcoin's up 65%, Cleanspark's down only up 47%, so a little bit better than the rest of the miners here at least. Everybody's in the negative territory except for Cleanspark. Core, don't have any data on them because they switched ticker symbols on them. But you can see a lot of these guys are still down like 50%, 40%, 30%. So it hasn't been a great 12 weeks after, well, pretty much after the new year. It seems like the miners haven't done that well, even though Bitcoin's been going up. The miners haven't really performed that well. So, and that could be a contribution of people getting into MicroStrategy, going into spot Bitcoin ETFs, going into Bitcoin itself potentially, and going into altcoins as well. We're seeing the altcoins pumping. And then we'll get this rotation back into the miners. And I think the majority of the reason is we have the halving event coming up within 32 days. And that's been obviously kind of keeping the miners down in price over that period of time. Okay, but it's always nice to take a look at what's going on here. We can see on the table here, red week, this prior week, or this past week. And then the prior week to that, we had a almost pretty good week, almost in the green. We had a red week prior to that. And we had green, green, red, green, and like 3 weeks of red here in beginning of the year, it looks like. And then you can see how we had, going into the new year, we had a bunch of green weeks here. Only had maybe 1 or 2 red weeks that were, and if you're looking at it that way. So I'm expecting things to kind of rotate out a little bit for a time being, and then they'll rotate back into the miners. Miners are still, I think, the best play in town because, as you know, once Bitcoin starts going up to 100,000, 150,000, 200,000, the profits the miners are going to be making on the Bitcoin that they are generating is going to be huge, 80, 90% profit margins. You can't get that from any place else, so it's going to be a huge leverage play on Bitcoin basically at that point. Okay, but that is it, how things have stacked up. We'll see what happens obviously next week. We still have a bunch of miners that still need to report their quarterly results for Q4 and fiscal year end numbers. Once they do that, we'll run some numbers as far as comparisons, break-even pricing on all these guys. All that stuff is yet to come, but I'm just waiting on all those results there. So that is it. And then here's my little sales pitch as always. All of the spreadsheets that I have, the charts, data, everything that I do is on Patreon. That's still $8 a month there. And then you have some open spots maybe at the $5 range and $4 range. And you get access to the Discord private server as well. A lot of great communications going on there, chats. A lot of people giving good advice there as well. And it's always fun to chat on there. But that's it. That's my sales pitch. If you guys want to get access to it, the description is down in the link, or link to Patreon is down in the description. That's what I wanted to say. But that's it. Let's get into the Q&A, see what you guys have any questions on, and then we'll call it a day. And then coming up here, I do have in about 45 minutes or so, I have a Twitter Spaces with Bitcoin mining stock guy, aka Guy. And that's at 4 o'clock. So if you guys follow me on Twitter, you guys will see the link to that over there. I'll probably post it here once I'm done here. So that is it. Let me know what you guys have questions on. Let's get into those, and then we'll call it a day. All right, questions. I'll get over to my screen that I need questions on. Let's see what you guys have as far as that. Okay. All right. Okay, let's see. Hank asks, any idea on Cypher debt? Thanks again. Cypher, let me take a look at my numbers here for Cypher, because I got too many numbers in my head. Don't want to give you guys the wrong number. So Cypher debt at the end of Q4. Let's see here. Assets, so current assets, liabilities, accounts payable, accrued operating. Total liabilities at the end of fiscal year was 33.7. Doesn't look like they have any loans out. It's just accrued expense was 22 million. Finance lease liability was 3.4. So not a lot of debt there. Their balance sheet is right now, total current assets was 155 million. So there's really no concern on them right now. Let's see. Will Applied stock go up to its highs? Any thoughts? Not sure. I don't cover Applied. I know that they're infrastructure play. It'll be interesting to see how they do after obviously selling the property to Marathon for 80-some million. But we'll see. Question: do you think Riot will announce they are fully funded to 40 exahash? I thought the CEO said it in an interview somewhere. I have not seen that. But obviously, if they stated that they're fully funded to 40 exahash, I think the stock will take off at that point. We saw it also with Cleanspark when that happened. When they stated they're getting to 16 exahash fully funded, the stock just took off after that. The concern of further dilution was no longer there, so the stock did really well. But it would be obviously good on Riot to do that if they are there. And then let me see here. Let's see here. If you had to choose Iris or Bitfarms, both actually. I like both of them because they're both growing. The only thing on Iris that is a little bit of a ding to them is no hodl, and then obviously reporting the financial results every 6 months instead of the quarterly. That's the only dings on them. But other growth is good. Operations are good. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Good, healthy balance sheet as well. Really no problems there. Let's see. Question. Is it possible we are entering the BTC pre-halving dip period? Do you have any idea how miners have performed during this period? Could be. But the only difference is last cycle, the miners were going down into the halving event while Bitcoin was actually going up a little bit. So we're not really seeing that dip. We had a dip in Bitcoin a little bit after the halving last cycle. But this time we've been way up on miners and way up on Bitcoin and everything else. And I think that's mainly because the spot Bitcoin ETF has having a huge impact on that. So this cycle is completely different from what we had before. We also reached an new all-time high in Bitcoin price before the halving event, which has never happened before. So it's a way different cycle this time around. We can't really use the data that we have for previous cycles because it's so different. Okay, but if it dips, like I said, I'm buying more. I'm not too worried about it. Let's see. Hey, Seb, any updates on IREN on doing quarterly reported instead of 6 months report? Nothing yet. There have been stories out there that if they have more than 50% of the revenue coming from the United States, then that would make them that would force them to report quarterly. If that's the case, I think that would be good. I think investors would like that instead of having to wait 6 months on to see how they're doing. Right? I think that's why the stock hasn't been doing that great. Let's see it. Question, would you DCA down on Bitfarm now or wait for it to drop further? So I bought Bitfarms Monday. I bought another $1,000 worth of shares in it. Can't remember what the exact number it was because it was back, but I bought more. So I will buy more if it dips even more. And I'm thinking to possibly deploy some more capital here next week as well. Any idea why Bitfarms is a laggard? Mainly because of the fear of dilution, right? They have the 375 million ATM. They're supposed to be getting to 21 exahash by the end of the year. They obviously need to pay for the miners. They need to grow as well, their infrastructure, or build out their infrastructure. So that's having an impact on them. We've seen it with other miners as well that have ATMs. They tend to lag until they either report they are fully funded or they stop, or they say that they stop tapping the ATM at that point. Let's see. What do you think about BitDeer versus Marathon? Are you talking about their ASICs plans? Marathon has the miners possibly through Auradine. BitDeer has their own, what do they call those? Geese miners or goose miners, whatever the heck those things are called. Seal miners. Seal miners. Marathon is obviously much larger when it comes to their self-mining. I mean, it's pretty much predominantly their own self-mining. BitDeer has a lot of different business segments. They only have right now like 6.7 exahash for self-mining, and they have like 14 exahash or something like that for hosting and other things that they're doing there. So I think Marathon will probably do better because of that. Plus just the growth. BitDeer, I don't think it has any growth plans until 2025, right? So let's see. Reading that Cypher and Wolf will have an all-in cost to mine Bitcoin of approximately 17,000 post-halving. Do you know if this is correct? This will not be correct. Post-halving, you should be closer to like 30, 40, well, probably around 30,000, give or take a little bit, based on just electrical costs and maybe some operations costs into it as well. But they do have really low cost of electricity. That's going to help them out, obviously. And then just depending on how well they produce. But if you include other costs into it, the debt payments, the interest payments on that, operating, general administrative costs, things look a little bit different at that point. And we'll do those numbers when we have all the numbers for all the miners for Q4 numbers. Let's see. Some thoughts on ETH. So Ethereum ETF, do you think peeps will sell their BTC ETFs for that one once they launch? Good question. Not sure. I don't even know if the Ethereum ETF is going to get approved. I know that there's Ethereum futures, so it looks like it will get approved because the courts have said if there's, why would you allow a futures product but not allow a spot product? So eventually I think we'll get approved, but I don't know if people are going to be running over to Ethereum for that reason. I think Bitcoin is still the golden standard, so to say. Any major ATM for IREN before halving? I think they already have an ATM that they're pulling on. I don't know exactly how much they have left of it. I'll have to take a look into that one. Excuse me. Let's see. If Wolf can reduce its debt in April, thoughts on price after halving? Well, they already reduced it by 40 million, right? They paid down that 40 million that they needed to pay down before April, which was in the contract. Now they have to pay down the rest of 100 and some million, 104, I think, by the end of this year. So they're going to definitely try and pay that down even more. They did state that they want to pay whatever they generated in Q1, pay that in April as well to pay that down, which is going to be good. And then we'll see if they can restructure that debt or just pay it off through dilution or something like that. Either way, they got to do something about it because that's going to be obviously a little bit more hard, put a lot more hardship on them come after having it because of the interest payments on it. Let's see here. Do you see BTC mining environment improve Canada in the near future? Not sure. I don't really follow Canada that well as far as what's going on with the regulatory things and things like that. Pricing on electricity. Obviously, we've had Hut 8, right? They have their Drumheller facility basically shut down because the economics are not there for the miners. But not sure what kind of price they're paying there as well. So it's kind of tough to say. Looking at the next question. Okay. Debating between DCA down my Bitfarms calls or getting some TeraWolf calls. I think TeraWolf would be a good play. TeraWolf, I think, would be a good play if they could pay down their debt. That's the only thing. If they can get that restructured, pay down the debt or something like that, that might be a better play on it. They do have good growth plans as well, low cost of electricity. The only thing that's kind of overhanging on them is the debt, but things could change really quick. So I think both are really good. Bitfarms, obviously, debt-free. That helps. But, yeah, it's your call. Let's see. Do you have Wolf or IREN in your portfolio? If not, why? And do you plan to invest in any of them? So I do have IREN. I have a small position, a couple hundred shares in them. I started buying into them, what was it, like November, December of last year. So just within the last 5 or so months. And the reason I started getting into them then was mainly because I wanted to see how they are growing, right? They had the miners that they had to return in 2022, which were under the special purpose vehicles. And then I just wanted to see what are the growth targets going forward. So in the meantime, I dollar cost average more into Cleanspark and Bitfarms. I got really good positions on those, and I was happy with that. So then I'm like, okay, I can start dollar cost averaging into Iris or IREN now. And I'll probably do that again a little bit more here, but we'll see. Okay, Bitfarms, IREN, Cleanspark. Which one you will buy next week? What your target price to buy more on them? I buy the dip, so it doesn't really have a price target. So if they dip a little bit, I bought Bitfarms last Monday, right? It dipped down. I got it at like $2.42, $2.46. I can't remember exactly. It dipped down. I bought it. If it dips down again, I'll buy it. Cleanspark. So it just depends how much cash I have. If I have cash available to deploy, I will deploy it. And I don't really care where the price is as long as it's dipping. But there is obviously a price point where I probably won't buy above. Maybe like for Cleanspark, I maybe not buy above $15. My average cost on it is $3 and something. So for me, I can get still probably a 5x, maybe even 10x return. Still wouldn't be too bad. So maybe above 20, I wouldn't buy any more. But I think that I can buy some more in like Bitfarms and IREN where I can get more shares out of it. And there might be a little bit more upside in those because they've been beaten down. While Cleanspark has had a nice run up here in the last couple of weeks. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at things. Let's see. Which miners are likely to experience the highest ATM? Some have raised sufficient cash already. Well, I mean, Marathon has raised or has gotten an ATM for 1.5 billion. Riot has gotten one for 750 million, I believe. Cleanspark has gotten one also for, was it 500 million, I believe? Can't remember exactly. 500 or 750 million, I can't remember exactly which one it is. But they all have ATMs. It's just a matter of how well they can execute, what price they can buy the miners at, and then that'll obviously depend on how much they actually use of the ATM. Right? If they get an ATM for 1.5 billion, like Marathon did, it doesn't mean that they're going to use everything up. They're just going to use what they need, but they have that cushion there to do whatever they need to if they want to. So remember, they won't always use up everything. Thanks to your due diligence, I changed from Hut 8 to Cleanspark last summer, and that has saved me. Oh, very welcome. Right, this is all my stuff here is based on data and metrics and things that I like at the miners, and that's kind of what's helping me get into Cleanspark from 2 years ago, into Bitfarms as well, into Iris. I look at a lot of these metrics here, and that's kind of what's guiding me. It's not anything that's based on my own liking or anything like that, or I like one miner over another. No, it's all based on data. If the data starts pointing out that Cleanspark's starting to run like crap or something like that, I'll get into another miner if that happens, because it's all just based on data. Data is what leads me to my decisions on it. Let's see here. Do you think the proposed Biden mining tax will be a big impact on the miners? No. We also saw that last year, where it didn't even get into the House of Congress or House or Senate for being included in the tax bill or anything like that. So I don't think it's going to get included in that. If it does, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, because it's basically unfairly singling out a single industry that uses electricity, where there's other industries that also use electricity a lot. You got the smelters for aluminum, you got other things, you got automotive manufacturers, you got data centers that are the same, not just Bitcoin miners. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Does IREN create value for their shareholders if they do not hodl and management take higher compensation? Thanks. Well, okay, let's start with higher compensation there. So with the miners, you're seeing quite a few of them, unfortunately, get nice share-based compensation, they get bonuses, they get all this stuff. I'm okay with it to an extent, as long as they are growing really, 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 really well and providing value to investors that way, fine. I'm not okay if they give themselves a huge bonuses, compensation, if they're just holding water or just status quo, right? If you're growing, that's one thing. But if you're not and your stock price is going up, that's one thing as well. But if those things are not going on there, you shouldn't be getting raises, bonuses, all that stuff. And then it's basically dependent on the industry here, right? We see Marathon, Riot, Cleanspark have some of the higher end compensation packages. They're also some of the bigger guys. So we kind of have to look at it in that regard, right? And then also, how long have these guys been in it? What's the regular pay? Things like that. And then on top of that, how much does the compensation get added for share-based compensation, performance-based compensation, all those things. So it's a tough question to ask. And then as far as them not hodling, there is obviously some benefit, I think, to hodl. Maybe not as much as we think. One reason is, look at Hut 8, right? They have a huge hodl, 9,000 Bitcoin, but the stock is in the dumps. Why is that? Because they're not performing on operation side of things, where they're growing their hash rate. Whereas we see other companies like Cleanspark have a smaller hodl, do really good on operations inside like that and growing, and we see the stock going up. So I think there's a lot of disconnect between the two now, especially since hodl was more of a BTC proxy before than it is now with the spot Bitcoin ETFs. And you got MicroStrategy now that has 100,000 plus of Bitcoin on its balance sheet. It makes more sense to go into those things than it does with the miners that have a huge hodl, right? And with the new FASB rules, eventually the miners, I think it's going to be more beneficial for them to sell the hodl than it is to keep it on the books, especially if Bitcoin price goes down in value. So we'll see how that all plays out. Let's see. Have you seen Hut 8's cost to mine clarification? Hut confirmed their cost to mine is 19,000, not the reported 70,000 from Cantor Fitzgerald. Yeah, I saw that. I mean, currently it's 19,000 per Bitcoin, which is only based on, I believe, electricity cost and maybe some operational costs as well in that. So basically employees that are running the mining farms in that. That is more in line with what I'm seeing for them from their numbers, but we'll see what they report actually for Q4 numbers. Once they report that, we'll get a better number. The 70,000 from Cantor Fitzgerald might have been including everything like G&A, research and development, sales, all these other things that they had included that are cash-based expenses. But the Cantor Fitzgerald report was just messed up to begin with, right? It had, I think, who was a Bitdeer that was like at 13,000 or something like that, which was just crazy. Don't know where they got the numbers on that one. Let's see here. How do you see CORZ for the future? I almost bought $3.10, but was not sure still about the company. So CORZ is doing really well right now, but we need to see the financial results after they got out of bankruptcy. So that'll be for Q1 and then possibly Q2 as well. Right now, the numbers we got from them were for Q4, which they were in still bankruptcy at that point. So I'm really looking forward to see what they provide for Q1, where they got out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. At that point, we'll see how they're doing. But growth-wise, they're doing well. They're doing the right things as far as growing their business. They're getting into AI as well, right? They got a contract for $100 million for that. Those are all good things going towards the company. I think the company is just way undervalued right now. And that's because they were in Chapter 11 bankruptcy, right? A lot of people are skittish of getting back into the company that has been in bankruptcy. So it needs time for that to possibly work its way through, see how their balance sheet is, how their cash flow is, right? Once we see those types of things, I think the stock will probably do a lot better going forward. Let's see here. Hey, Sebastian, great work on these streams. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Do you see BTC and the miners having a big pullback once the halving has the past, like the ETFs pullback, and there not being another narrative after that? I don't think we're going to see a huge pullback. I mean, we're kind of seeing a little bit of a pullback in BTC right now. The miners obviously pulled back here in the last 4 weeks or so anyways. So we've already saw that in the miners, and it's just a matter of time before we get that reallocation going on or rotation back into the miners potentially within the next couple of weeks, I guess. You know, maybe before the halving event, or it might be after the halving event. We'll have to see how that goes. But I look at these kind of pullbacks as buying opportunities because we know that Bitcoin price after the halving event, we're going to have a supply crunch in Bitcoin. It's going to go from 900 Bitcoin to 450 Bitcoin. And the ETFs are just eating up all the Bitcoin that's available out there right now. So they're going to even eat up even more after that. And then we're also seeing more and more adoption, more people getting into the ETFs and everything else, other countries and things like that. So there's still a lot of bullish narrative, I think, to go before we start seeing a pullback or a massive pullback in both, which might not be for another year or so. Let's see. Okay, Corsicana should be energized by the end of this month. Do you think it will help Riot close the gap a little between itself and Cleanspark Mara by the end of the year? Yes, if they can operate efficiently there and have a better much uptime. Big question I have for Jason on that one is, since that facility is also going to be immersion cooled, have they learned anything from the mishap that they had at Rockdale facility with those two buildings that were immersion cooled, right? They had the power storm. They had a winter storm come through there, or a storm come through there, knocked them out for their immersion for whatever reason. They were out for almost like 10, 12 months or something like that at those two buildings because of whatever reason the parts that they needed were coming in from England or something like that. So did they learn anything from that? Did they correct their mistakes there to prevent those from happening again? All right, if they did that, that's great. And then also, I'd like to know what is their PPA at that facility as far as, do they have access to the whole gigawatt that's available to them, or do they also have like 450 megawatts available to them per month at a PPA, and the rest is going to be at prevailing prices, right? So just need to see those types of things. And then if they have the PPA for 100% of what they can actually get electricity-wise, then that would be fantastic. That means that they should be able to run a lot more on those miners, more closer to 100% uptime than they do right now in Rockdale. Okay. Thoughts on Mara price at the end of the bull market? Well, if we're thinking Bitcoin goes up another, let's just say 3-4x from where it is right now, you could say Marathon could be up another just 3x of that, so 3 to 4. So I'd say 12x from here potentially. You know, I'd say maybe from 6 to 12x from here, somewhere around there. Let's see here. With Digihost purchasing more miners, opening that facility recently in New York, do you see them surviving the halving? That is an interesting question there. It's going to be tough for them. And the reason I say that is their costs are pretty good, but their expenses are pretty bad. So as far as operations, things like that, if we look at their numbers here really quick, I'll point this out to you guys as well. So here's Digihost numbers, looking over here. So right now, total current assets 3.3, liabilities 5.6 as of Q3, right? So we're still waiting for the Q4 numbers results for them. And if we look over here, miners mining analysis, this is the latest information that I have on all these guys. Digihost at that point, with Bitcoin being at 72,000, network hash rate of 570 exahash, block reward, they're looking like they're going to be just slightly positive here, potentially, right? So Bitcoin still continues going down. I mean, Bitcoin's down to what, 68,000 right now. at 68,000, they would be still just barely profitable there, right? So depending on what other expenses they have here, that could be an issue for them. But if they're growing, they should be okay. But it's going to be tough, right? Depending also where the network hash rate goes. The network hash rate goes up to, in the next month to, say, 600. Now they're still going to be able to squeak out just barely being profitable there on it. So they should be okay. But they don't have a lot of runway potentially. We'll have to see on it. Okay. Going back here. What did we miss here as far as questions? Okay, hey Seb, if and when you plan to buy Riot, Mara, or CORZ? Thanks. Well, in order for me to buy Riot or Marathon, they would have to do a heck of a lot better on their productions than they are right now. Their efficiencies would have to go up as well. They would just have to perform well. CORZ, my dad has CORZ, so I don't know if I'm going to get into CORZ, but my dad's got plenty of CORZ right now. But I may buy if we see some good numbers from them from Q1. So I'm still waiting on Q1, and then if those aren't that great, I may have to wait until like maybe Q2 numbers to see how those look as far as their cash flow, all that stuff that you would have in the financial results to see how they are doing after Chapter 11 bankruptcy. That's what I really want to see. Let's see. What are your thoughts on investing in ETFs such as BKCH or BitQ instead of specific miners? I have it in my 401k. I have WGMI in that one. That one's it's done great for me, right? It hasn't really outperformed the miners, which we don't expect them to really outperform the miners themselves. But it's at least a balanced approach to it there. I can only get ETFs, so I went with that. And I think that's a great way to do it. But if you want actual much better gains, go with the miners themselves. Just get into the big ones that are growing, that have healthy balance sheets, all the right things, right? And that one. Bitfarms, Cleanspark, IREN price targets by the end of the year, depending where Bitcoin goes. Right, Bitcoin goes up 2x. You can see these guys being up 3 to 4x from where they are right now, potentially, if not more. Sometimes, you have FOMO in, they can do a lot better. But that's kind of the way I would look at it. Bitcoin goes up 2x, they could be 3 to 4x, if not higher. Is the Marathon acquisition short-term bullish? Might be, depending how fast they can get that turned around to their own, get their own team in there and all that stuff. That's still going to be growing pains in there for them, I think. I don't know if the people that are employed there now will be staying on, or if they're going to bring in new people, but we'll see. It's a good thing in my opinion, right? Them getting their own facilities is definitely a plus there. Okay. Any feedback on WGMI? Like I said, I have it in my 401k. I like it. I think it's just an easy way to do it in a retirement account or something like that, where you don't have to really think about it. But yeah, I have no problems with that one. That one's done really well for me over the last year. I got into it in January of last year, 2023. What do you see Bitfarms hitting this bull run? I'm thinking somewhere between $15 and $30, depending on how well they grow, how well Bitcoin goes up, right? Bitcoin goes up much higher, could go up much higher than that too. And then also depending on how much FOMO we get, that all depends. What will Bitfarms efficiency be after they install all the new miners? It's going to be like 21 joules per terahash, based on what I've calculated so far. So it's going to be really good, which is going to be great, because they're also going to get rid of some of the older miners that they have, the 100 terahash miners and 103, something like that. Replace those as well. They're going to sell the older miners, so that'll get them into a much better joules per terahash efficiency. What gives the miners their value? If BTC is cut in half every 4 years and they can significantly add to their HODL, how can they grow? Why not just buy MicroStrategy? Okay, MicroStrategy, right? It's a nice MicroStrategy. You can buy Bitcoin at lower costs, or lower prices, spot prices for Bitcoin. But as Bitcoin price goes up, it's going to make it a little bit harder for them, right? If Bitcoin goes up to 150,000, 200,000, it's going to be tougher for them to buy that. Well, they can still buy it, but it's going to be much higher in price, right? Whereas the miners, Bitcoin goes up to that 150,000, 200,000, their profit margins are going to increase. So right now, the profit margins are like around 30, 40, 50%. By the time Bitcoin gets to that position here, even with the halving, their profit margin is going to be like 90%. That's huge, right? And that's kind of where you see the multiple on the miners getting higher X multiples, okay? That's the way to look at it. All right, I think we're caught up here. It's already 3:44. Got about 15 minutes before I jump on the call with the Bitcoin mining stock guy. That's on Twitter, guys. If you guys want to join me there, we go, geez, last time we went 5 hours long in that space. We talked about a lot of the miners. We had actually people on from there. Also, we got the, boy, I can't remember his name right now, but we do have IREN, operations guy. What is his title there? VP of operations or something like that, joining us on the space today as well on Twitter. So join us there. That starts at 4 o'clock. And then we'll see what happens tomorrow. I don't think we're going to do a video tomorrow. I'm going to probably rest up some more. And then we'll get into swing of things again on Monday. But that is it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did, hit the like button, subscribe. Helps me out tremendously. As always, I appreciate you guys greatly for coming in to watch these videos. And then if you guys have any questions, hit me up in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter. You know, I'm a little bit behind my comments, responding back to you guys. And that's because I was sick. But I'm catching up on things. And I always try to reply at least within like 24 hours. If at all possible. But there's just so many of you guys. So be patient with me. All right, that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you again.